Nick, welcome to Caribbean American Passport Cap Villages show. Anna in the Tropics, you're the director. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am. Yes, thank you so much for having me. My name is Nick Bazo. I am a native of Florida, which is very rare. My family's
So
been in
rare, so
very
rare.
rare. My family, at least most of my family, immigrated from Cuba over the last almost 100 years, just back and forth from the Keys to Havana and back and forth again. So I have a lot of connection to the story and South Florida as well.
And I heard like so when they immigrated about 100 years ago, it was for that same kind of cigar industry kind of story.
So it was, I'd say it was a mix of cigar rollers and bakers, which are very common Cuban
Ooh.
immigrant occupations.
Hmm.
And, I found out through like my grandfather and my dad, but also I did one of those like history searches of my family, and it all matched up to what, my grandparents told me. So I had several cigar rollers in my family, both in Key West and in Tampa.
Wow. So tell me, because we'll delve into what Anna in the Tropics is about just now. But tell me, were you aware of the rich Cuban heritage in Tampa? Did you grow up knowing that story?
Yeah, like I said, I'm originally from Key West in South Florida, but when we moved to Central Florida when I was around 13 or so, we would go to Tampa to go for the weekends for Cuban food, for going to the grocery stores where you couldn't find some of the other items that you maybe can find more popularly now in other parts of Florida. So yes, very
Oh,
aware.
okay. Wow. And so, folks, I'm from Guyana originally, and then I came up and I went to Miami. I was in Homestead, then Miami Gardens, where of course I fell in love with Cuban coffee because I could get it so accessible there. But I really had no idea about Tampa because we'd go back down actually to Miami and we'd have to get our Cuban coffee because Orlando didn't have when we moved here didn't have Zazas and all these places that they now kind of have
Yes.
so richly. So I never knew anything about the Tampa part of Cuban history.
And Tampa was actually more Cuban than Miami until the after the revolution. That only it's a more recent history of the Cubans in Miami.
So that brings us straight into Anna in the Tropics because again, to me, this is a way that we help tell the story of immigration or rich history, the contributions to development of a entire city, Ybor City, and all of that stuff. Tell us a bit about Anna in the Tropics.
Yeah, so it's what I like to call an American play told through the eyes of a Latino Cuban family experience. It comes with high drama, romance, murder. It's something for everybody, but also it's a specific story about a specific community, but also very universal in its themes and the story really of how, immigrants and this country was built by those immigrants.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like when folks come out, I hope they go out and they of course they'll enjoy the play, I'm sure. But I hope they kind of tap in and realize, wait, let me figure out more about these factories that built Ybor City. Let me find out more about how Cuban immigrants there played such a rich role in sending monies back to Cuba for the revolution. Let me understand that Cuban American history started way before we really thought of it, which is again the Miami piece and how important it was to building communities and cities. I'll tell you one of the things that struck me is in talks with Orlando Shakes, I kept referencing I know of La Gaceta, and this is a huge magazine newspaper. And I didn't understand why it was the oldest magazine newspaper in the U.S. or in Florida, and it was based in Tampa. And in going back to look at it, the first publisher started as a lector.
Yes, absolutely. The lectors, for those of you who don't know, were the readers who read to the Cuban immigrants who were literally rolling the cigars. So as a way to not only pass the time, they hired lectors to educate the populace. Often, most of these immigrants did not read or write, but they could, recite stories that were from classic literature, from newspapers. Like this was a way of not only entertaining and keeping the rollers literally in their seats doing their jobs, but to educate them as well.
It took them across the world. It opened up their minds. That's what it did, right?
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's a very rich history and a very unique history.
And a lot of folks don't even understand too how the lectors were such an important part of life for those communities, especially pulling together the Italian communities, the Cuba, so the Italian, the Spanish, all of that pulled into one. These lectors had to be leading figures, right? Really, really smart people.
I mean, they were, I would say, like celebrities in a way in their local towns. Everyone knew who they
Yes.
were. They were usually the highest educated. They came from a slightly different background. So, it definitely, they were, like I said, local celebrities.
Yeah, local celebrities. I mean, that's, I guess like the big super influencer of the time now. That would be what a
100%.
lecture was.
100%. Yes,
And,
absolutely was.
and so the lecture in this story in Anna in the Tropics, how big of a role does that lecture play?
I mean, the thing about this particular lector is that he, what I like to call, stirs the pot. He opens the mind of everybody in the story to think in a new way about themselves, about their relationships, about what they're doing with life, just because they're being exposed to something that's new and different and being educated on, things that are happening worlds away.
Now we know, because you did this play, I did the research. We know how important just educating minds are. But what would you say is important for today's conversation that people could draw from that play about education?
Well, I think first of all that education plays an important role in thinking about how we live and how we gather and how we interact with one another, both in like our relationships, but also in our community. But also that learning things helps us to question and to expand our minds in a way that opens them to new ideas.
I love that. And I told you I wasn't going to keep you too long, and I hope this was a comfortable interview, but I do want to say, ask this actually. How does it feel to tell a story about that is so rich in your heritage? How does that feel?
Well, I think, that was part of my heritage that I only knew a couple facts about. And just think about like putting myself in my great 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 grandfather's shoes to understand a little bit about the journey that it was to build a life here. It took just like any of us who are wanting to build something new, that they were obviously going through maybe some of the similar things that we are going through, but in a different way today. So it really meant a lot to me to put myself in their shoes in a way that I hadn't before.
I love it. I love it. Nick, as we close out, anything else you'd like tonight is where I think the writer is going to be at the opening night tonight, right?
Yeah,
That's
Nilo
amazing. That's a
Cruz.
major night for folks.
Absolutely. Who wrote this play almost 20, just over 20 years ago, won the Pulitzer Prize for drama. He was the first Latino playwright to win a Pulitzer Prize for drama. And so he gets
Mhm.
to be in the house with us tonight. So it's
That's
definitely a
huge.
dream come
That's
true for us.
huge. I
Yes.
also heard that this play was one of the only ones that actually won a Pulitzer Prize, also that didn't show in New York. Is that
It
also
did show in
something?
New York eventually too. It was on Broadway as well.
Ah,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
So this is an important piece for folks to understand. We've got to support it. We've got to keep it. It goes up until September 21st, right?
Correct. Yes. Come out to the Shakes. I think, even it's a story about, like I said, a very specific community, but it definitely is reflective of all of us and everything that we hope for when we go out to see theater.
I love it. Thanks for joining us, Nick.
Thank you so much
I
for having me.
we'll be there tonight, so I hope to shake your hand right after and say, well done. So
Thank you. I'll be
excited to
glad to
see
see
this
you.
play.